Hello, my name is John Rose, and in this video I'd like to take a closer look at some of the reasons why some of us really struggle trying to learn more about nutrition. And I'm reminded of this all the time because I'm seeing people who have been studying this for a decade or so, and they're still scratching their head not being able to figure things out. And I know why they struggle so much. Of course, first of all, there's more confusion around nutrition than any other subject. There shouldn't be. We should know very easily what we're supposed to do, but it's a reflection of the mistakes we've made in that area and then how it's affected us, where the truth is hard to find. But right now, if you're searching for the truth, the reason why so many people struggle when they read all these different ideas is that they really don't truly understand the disease process, and they also don't understand how we store energy. Once we understand the disease process, once we understand how we store energy, figuring out what to eat becomes very simple. So when nutritionists are taught, when our so-called experts are taught about nutrition, they don't know anything about the disease process. And then the people who are supposed to understand the disease process, they don't understand nutrition, so they don't understand how it's affecting the body when it goes through. But the main thing is they just don't understand the disease process. And disease is mainly due to two main factors: deficiencies and toxicities. A lot of the deficiencies are actually due to the toxicities, but not all of them. And we can't ignore that. But when you look at the vast majority of our problems, most of them come from this toxicity side of the equation. And when we look at toxins, there are endogenous toxins that are produced within and exogenous toxins that we get from outside. And then when you look at most of our problems, they're mostly coming from those endogenous toxins that we produce ourselves. Our own waste matter is what ends up biting us on our butt, because we're not eating the right foods to begin with. That damages our filtration systems. Our bathroom gets plugged up, it gets dirty, it gets plugged up, it backs up, and most of our diseases happens when our lymph system backs up into our body. And if you don't understand how that works, then you're not going to be able to understand the truth about nutrition. Because once you understand that certain foods are going to damage this system and create excess waste in the body, which is then going to cause the disease, if you don't understand that, if you don't get that, then you're going to be easily tricked into thinking, oh, but these are cancer-fighting foods. And we don't want to look at which foods are cancer-fighting, although we have exogenous toxins that we have to worry about, and those might be beneficial for that. But what we need to know is that there are some food groups that don't promote cancer. Once again, once you understand the disease process, that disease is not an entity, it's a bodily process. And our so-called experts in medicine, our allopathic doctors, they don't understand the disease process. They think they have to interfere with it. And that's the last thing you want to do. You want to understand what it's doing, what stage it's in, and what it's trying to do. And if it's in the beginning stages where it's trying to cleanse the body, you help it cleanse the body. And you always begin, no matter where it's at, by stop polluting the body. That's our problem, is we're putting in the wrong foods to begin with. So most of our problems are coming from things that get inside of us that don't belong there, whether it's electromagnetic radiation, or whether it's a Twinkie, or conventional produce sprayed with pesticides. But mainly the problem we have is our own system that stops functioning properly. Once you understand that most of our diseases come from our own system backing up into itself, then you understand, well, how do I reverse all of that? And that's when you figure out the foods that you eat are also going to make sense relative to its bowel transit time. Again, we need to understand that the food that wants us to eat it is designed to keep our small fuel tank full at all times. See, we have two fuel tanks. A big fat fuel tank, a small carbohydrate fuel tank. Once you understand that, along with understanding the bowel transit time of our food and the disease process, you're going to see that what we're supposed to eat is obvious. When you eat the food that wants us to eat it, fruits, that cleanses the lymph system, it changes the bowel transit time of our food. It changes the ionic pressure in our colon itself. And it keeps our carbohydrate fuel tank full, so we always have plenty of energy. If you simply understood the small carbohydrate fuel tank that we store carbohydrates in our liver and our muscles. It's a small fuel tank, and you don't want it to empty, which is how some diets work. They want it to empty because they know the body has an emergency mode to deal with what happens when we do that, and the body can still function, but a lot of people are using that saying, look, I can do this and then lose weight. But that's an emergency mode. It's our backup system. You don't use the backup system because the backup system doesn't have a backup system. So we have a simple system. It's a small carbohydrate fuel tank. You want to eat foods that are high in carbohydrates, not low in carbohydrates. You don't want the fuel tank to empty. You want to always top it off. But you put in the food that we're biologically adapted to eat, that has the right bowel transit time. You don't want complex sugar. You don't want starches. You want simple sugar. You want amino acids. You want the fruit. And then you don't want the protein that's complex. You want the amino acids. So when you look at how our anatomy is designed, when you realize we had a small carbohydrate fuel tank, when you realize that we have long intestines and meat is going to take too long to go through there, too much stuff is going to be in there, it changes the ionic pressure, it pollutes the blood, that damages the kidneys, as well as the animals, that damages the kidneys. The kidneys not only filter the blood, they filter the lymph, which is the bathroom, and that's the disease process. So again, if you don't understand the disease process, that's number one. You'll never understand nutrition. You have to understand what causes the disease, and then you won't get tricked into having people say, well, this is cancer fighting. No, the solution to cancer is not to fight it, it's to prevent it by not doing the things that create it. Most of the cancer we get is coming through our mouths from eating, but it can come from anything that doesn't belong inside of us, and there's a lot of things that we're subjected to right now. So if you're tired of not making any sense out of nutrition, what you got to do is embrace what the cause of disease is. Now, natural hygiene did a really pretty good job. There's a few pieces that they're missing when they explain how the lymph system works. I don't know why Shelton didn't articulate what he was taught when he went to Henry Lindler's college, and maybe Lindler wasn't at that level when Shelton went there. From what I read of Lindler, he was more explicit, and maybe that happened after Shelton was there, or Shelton didn't buy into that and didn't explain it. But natural hygiene understands the cause of disease, but they have flaws. And because of those flaws, they turn a lot of people off. And this whole video is about people I see that go to this raw food message board. I've seen them for decades, or for almost a decade or so. And they're still totally clueless, and they poo-poo natural hygiene because natural hygiene makes themselves look stupid. Because they don't understand there's 3 ways to screw up the law of cause. And in fact, I did a video specifically on that, 3 ways to screw it up. They found 2 of them, and most people don't know either one of them, so that makes them really arrogant. But what gets them in trouble is the 3rd way. That's why T.C. Fry died, that's why Herbert Shelton died, and that's why a lot of natural hygienists repeat what these guys said, not realizing things have changed since those days, especially in the field of supplements. For example, you hear Herbert Shelton slamming supplements, vitamin supplements and things like that, and for a good reason. In his day, these were fragmented foods. They were worthless, they were no good. But nowadays, they're making supplements from whole foods. It's a whole different game. The processing has changed. We're not destroying things the way we're doing some things now. So there is a time and a place to use a supplement. Another flaw with natural hygiene that makes themselves look bad is they really didn't study everything that didn't fit with the law of cause and effect. So that's the 3rd way they screw up the law of cause and effect. They don't understand the ripple effect. So everything related to the ripple effect they didn't understand. They didn't understand we had 2 groups of needs. We have 12 essential needs based on the law of cause and effect, and we have 2 additional temporary needs based on the ripple effect. This is what natural hygienists didn't understand, and that's why so many people hate them and never benefit from what they can learn from them, because they understood the disease process from the toxicity standpoint. So as a result, natural hygiene would make stupid comments saying things like, well, herbs suppress symptoms. No, they don't. God, there's over a dozen functions of herbs, and not one of them I know of suppress any symptom. In fact, some of them are food herbs, and they help people produce things they're not producing, like mother's milk, for example. Are you suppressing a symptom to make mother's milk? That's absurd. So they make themselves look bad because they poo-poo things they've never studied, and they group everything as if it belongs with allopathic medicine. Now, to understand all this, and I've explained this before, I have a special teaching tool, 3 stages of knowledge, 6 boxes, 3 on the top, 3 on the bottom. And on the bottom, that's the wrong path with false knowledge, mistakes, problems. In between our mistakes and problems is where allopathic doctors are. I labeled that piece 106. Look at the ultimate schematic. You'll see I gave it a piece number. And what they do, they're magicians. They interfere with the body's communication process so the negative effects don't appear. It's magic. And natural hygienists say, oh, the herbs are magic. They're down in 106. No. You got to look at our two groups of needs in the plus 8 box of knowledge. 12 essential, 2 additional temporary needs. Piece 34 and piece 35 are the 2 additional temporary needs. 34 are 10 subsequent needs because we're sick and disconnected, because of hypoheliasis, because we lost one of our senses, because of the fall of mankind, because of cooking our food. But then we got piece 35, and this is where the art comes into play. This is the art of healing, the ripple effect. This is where some of our subsequent causes don't go away just because we remove the primary causes. This is something that natural hygienists haven't been able to articulate. By adding this to their story, we can now make natural hygiene a better science, as it is always going to evolve as we learn more. But they understand you got to satisfy those needs based on the knowledge of how to live. They don't understand knowledge of how to adapt. So you got cause and effect, ripple effect, 12 essential, 2 additional. On the tip of my tongue, come on, spit it out. Knowledge of how to live and knowledge of how to adapt. They're missing knowledge of how to adapt. That's why T.C. Fry died. That's why Herbert Shelton died. They didn't understand piece 35. You can remove the primary causes, but not all the subsequent causes go away, so that's piece 35. It's those subsequent causes that don't go away just because we remove the primary causes. And why? Because we can change what we do overnight and remove the primary cause, but we can't change what we got overnight. We can't change the condition of what we got overnight, so we got to deal with a body that's damaged. It may not be able to provide everything it needs, so we might have to supplement it on a temporary basis, hoping it's only temporary impairment and not permanent damage. And there is a point of irreversibility. We don't know where that is. So with some conditions, we know where it is. Ankylosis, if the bones fuse together, we can't do much about that. But pretty much everything else, the body can heal if we just get out of its way and satisfy these 2 groups of needs, realizing now it's a little more complicated. And natural hygienists never figured out how to articulate this other group of needs. That now our ideal diet might not work for everybody. Our ideal diet's an ideal diet in an ideal world. We don't live in one anymore. We've been damaged, the environment's been damaged, got another group of needs. We can change what we do overnight, but we can't change what we got overnight. And we have to realize we might have to temporarily add another need to that. And we may never be able to satisfy all of our needs by going to a raw vegan diet. So another flaw you see with some people will say, well, if you're doing this, you're not getting results, you're just doing it wrong, which many times they are. But you have to modify an ideal diet just like you have to modify a water fast for the same reason. We don't live in an ideal world anymore. So we modify the raw vegan diet, we modify a water fast, we take another form of solid food vacation, a juice fast, a juice feast, juice diet where you drink a bunch of juices. That's the way you really understand the disease process. So right now, most of us are struggling understanding anything because we don't understand the disease process. Take a solid food vacation and watch that serpent come out of you. You can get a better idea of the disease process because we're full of filth. This is why we're sick. And if you don't understand that, you don't understand how to get rid of it, then you're going to always be confused and misled and tricked into believing this study and going, oh my God, look at the triglycerides, they're elevated when you eat fruit. Oh God, I get so tired of hearing that one. My friends, triglyceride, that's only a risk factor. And when you eat a lot of fruit, it's absorbed so quickly, it's going to elevate your triglycerides momentarily in your blood, but that's not a problem. In other words, there's more than one way to have elevated triglyceride levels. One is good and one is bad. One is very short term, is because we process the fruit so quickly, which is the benefit of it, as opposed to taking something that's complex and making our body work harder and it comes in slower. Plus, not to mention, we'll be eating more fat, which takes longer to digest those. So when we normally eat fat, we digest it very slow at a rate of about 8 to 12 grams an hour. Average 10 grams, that's 93 calories every hour. So it may take a half a day to eat as much, to digest as much fat as most people eat. But when you're eating a low-fat diet, you won't have the triglycerides in the blood from the fat you eat, which comes in slowly at a pre-numbered rate. You're going to get a whole bunch of fruit at one time. the body will fill up that small carbohydrate fuel tank. The excess gets converted to fat. So voila, we got a bunch of triglycerides in our blood. Oh my God, your triglyceride levels are elevated. Yeah, because we just converted a bunch of that. We filled up our fuel tank, yippee, now we got a bunch of fat. That's where we get our fat, is from the excess carbohydrates. So yes, life can be really complicated, my friends. As long as you keep reading this study and getting tricked and by people who don't understand the disease process, they don't understand that we have a very small carbohydrate fuel tank and they don't know how we store energy. As long as you listen to those kind of people, you're going to be lost and misled and just as confused as they are. But once you figure out what it's all about, once you take a solid food vacation and poop that serpent out of you, you're going to have a better understanding of the disease process. And once you finally understand the disease process in its entirety, got a video down below, Healing Secrets Revealed, when you do that, you're in for a treat.